He's saying, gotta keep the gold, bro, you know?
Patrick, thank you so much for jumping on and chatting to us on the Funny Business podcast. For those at home listening, tell us, who are you and what do you do?
I'm Patrick. I'm the co-founder and CEO of AMP. We help we provide e-commerce merchants with software, and that software helps them generate an incremental dollar of revenue without spending more money on Facebook or any other form of customer acquisition.
Well, mate, we're pumped to chat with you today. We got
We've done a bit of stalking, but we can't call it that anymore.
we
It's
could call it
research.
research. Research is a better way. It sounds a lot more palatable than stalking, doesn't it? But
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
really excited to chat with you today, mate. I feel like going through and learning more about AMP, it looks insane. I can really understand the value that it provides, but love to rewind back a little bit and talk about yourself. What was your pathway into the world of business?
Yeah. So in 2013, so I'm Australian, actually live in Singapore, and in 2013, I joined a startup here called TradeGecko that provided inventory and order management software to e-commerce merchants, primarily on Shopify. And that was my sort of first foray into entrepreneurship. I was an employee there, but we had tens of thousands of dollars of annual revenue. It was a really nascent kind of thing, but it was amazing. We got to help a lot of merchants with their inventory and order management needs through there. I actually stayed there with Cameron, who was the CEO, and his brother Bradley, who was the CTO, for 3 years. Really loved helping all those customers. And then I left, but I didn't really leave that far. I co-founded a company with a software engineer from TradeGecko, who also happened to be another brother of Cameron. And TradeGecko was venture backed versus we bootstrapped that company. So Lachlan and I bootstrapped that company. It helped do review management for software companies in the same way like restaurants might use review management for Google and Yelp and those kind of things, or hotels. There's equivalent marketplaces for software. After bootstrapping that company for a few years, one of those software marketplaces is called G2, and we sold it to G2 after a few years.
That's crazy, man. How many brothers this guy got? Cameron
He's
got?
got three brothers. There's four of them.
What is it about choosing the right person to do this with? Like how important is that process?
I think it's really, it's imperative, right? Like it's almost like if you haven't chosen the right person, you haven't really arrived at the start line. You might not realize for 4 years. I think I was really fortunate in that, Lachlan and I still talk every day, still play video games together. We worked together for nearly 3 years at TradeGecko beforehand. And Cameron, who's the co-founder of AMP as well, it was almost inevitable, right? Like, I think to round out the story is I sold TradeGecko to G2. I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. The CEO, Godard, is amazing. He sold his first company to Oracle, his second company to Salesforce. I learned a lot working there. I was approaching the end of my earnout there. Concurrently, TradeGecko was acquired by Intuit, the provider of QuickBooks Online, like a really huge American software company. And, after about, 9 years of Cameron and I chatting every day, texting every day about what we wanted to do next time, like founders talking about what they want to do next time is almost like complaining about the weather, right? You can't do anything about it. Like, next time, oh, what about we do an insurance company, or what if we do this? You can't actually do anything about it. You just go back to your main startup. And then, with the end of the earnouts coming up, it was finally time to talk about it. So I don't even know if we had like a discreet conversation, like, oh, hey, dude, should we do something? But we would go on these long walks. It was actually during COVID. We'd go on these huge walks multiple times a week, and we just started talking through it. So I think Cameron and I doing something together again was more inevitable, but very fortunate on both the Lachlan front and Cameron front.
What about you personally? Like in the world of startups, is this something like growing up as a kid that you thought you'd be in this space? Like, did you already know about them? Were you interested in them? Like, did it happen by like chance that you fell into these sort of roles and learnt more about it?
Yeah, no, I think I was always very motivated by it. I don't have that like typical story about like going to the supermarket and buying like bags of chips and selling them at school. Like I don't have any of those necessarily, but I was always very inspired and motivated by being a builder of products and business person and an entrepreneur and self-sufficient and those kind of things.
What about like in the early doors of AMP? What type of things are you focusing on at the start? Like to make sure you're setting things up right, or is it a mindset thing? Like, what are some of the first things that you're onto?
Yeah, I think some of the first thing, like where AMP started, I think Cameron and I would go on these long walks, and I think what we were always going to do was SaaS. Like SaaS is something we're quite good at. We've been doing it for a combined 20 years or whatever, but it wasn't necessarily going to be e-commerce again. So what we did is the only thing that anybody should be doing is talking to customers and understanding their problems. And one of those segments was e-commerce merchants. And through talking to them, we found that they were having to use 25 to 40, let's say, varying quality software products to run their businesses the way they wanted to do it. Then no one gets into e-com or builds a brand, or no, even software companies don't want to use 40 different software products every day to get their business to run the way they wanted. So that was the first thing we observed. The second thing we observed was actually a lesson from TradeGecko that was still relevant with e-commerce merchants. Merchants like products that help them generate revenue, like short time to value that help them generate revenue without spending more money, say on Meta or TikTok or whatever. And then the third thing we observed was, for merchants, the integration between the 25 different apps they use is the product. You know, think about it this way. Like if there's a shipping software provider and a return software provider, the only thing that matters is they talk perfectly to one another. Because it doesn't matter how beautiful the return software management thing, if it doesn't update the shipping software, it's all kind of academic. But for the builders, of the entrepreneurs who were providing those software products to the merchants we provided, were maybe spending, the integration wasn't core to their product, right? Maybe 80-20 flipped the other way around. So I think to bring it back to your original question, what we were focusing on at the start is just talking to the merchants, and we weren't even validating an idea. We were just trying to understand, like merchants was one segment of customers we spoke to. But that's all that really matters at the start, I would say. And anything other than that is a negative.
Do you think things like this come about because of like the growth of Shopify and the marketplace that allows people to go and build a bunch of these plugins that are really specific and niche? So it's like, it's a cool thing that's also like how the internet works, where it's like it provides all these opportunities for people to build their own little plugins that play a piece in the customer journey of people for e-commerce things. But now it's like, it's crazy to think now how far it's come full circle of like now the problems it's creating, because there's so many that do so many different things. It's like, I've got to use all of them. I'm not saying they don't provide value, they do, but it's like, it's a mess for the people who are trying to like actually operate it.
Totally. And don't get me wrong, I would say some of the super niche ones are amazing. Like we do this really tricky thing in shipping that if you're buying figuring out the dimensional shipping weight of a hockey stick and hockey goal set, and if somebody also like there's loads of niche stuff that's really, really important. I think where it's hard is, one, the entrepreneurs who built, say, a size chart because they heard somebody else was making millions of dollars with a size chart. Like they didn't do that first part we were just talking about, which was why a size chart's important. It's because, a huge chunk of apparel orders are returned based on they're not fitting properly. So like they just were like, it needs to have these features and we can build it. And it could be they've even moved on to the next thing, but it still generates $100,000 a month or whatever. So it just sort of ticks along, but they're not even working on improving the product. It's impossible for a merchant to know that's the case, right? Yeah. So it is, the platform's so big.
I feel like your brain would be like sore almost, like you get so many use cases and insights because obviously all your different customers do different things. They all sell and process different stuff, but you're trying to piece together the platform and that plugs it all together in the background. It's like, that must be so interesting because you must get a bunch of insights from like a trends perspective that you're noticing of, hey, these brands are doing XYZ well, or I'm starting to see this happen. I feel like when we used to talk to the early doors when we had the founders of Linktree on, when
Oh
they were
yeah.
talking about how crazy the growth that was and the traffic they were having on Linktree, but also just the insights about things like trends before they become trends and insights they were able to get based on like what stuff or new type of links are being added to the link trees. I feel like you must get a bunch of the same sort of insights where you feel like finger on the pulse, like on the internet.
Yeah. I think interestingly, in the context of, I'll go sort of small first and then a bit bigger and further out. I think in the context of AMP, we have two key products that are integrated together. One is analytics and one is upsell. So what analytics does is it does the daily profit and loss. It brings in all the ad spend data from TikTok, from Facebook, helps you figure out the shipping costs, all the profitability. And the second key piece is all these customer behavior reports, repurchase rates of certain products, customer lifetime value, integrating with the subscription software, say for a coffee subscription, to figure out the retention. And the second piece is an upselling piece. So what's actually happening on the website. So, when you go on Amazon and you buy a basketball, it's like, do you want to pump? Do you want to hoop? Like these kind of natural upsells. You can add this to your order without increasing your shipping fee. Like we help general merchants do that on their own website. And you can kind of see how those things go quite nicely together because you can upsell products that have the highest repurchase rate, or these kind of the data, or you can start surveying people through the upselling product and pump that survey data into the analytics product. But I think what I'm saying there is two trends that we see that we've implemented is people using the time on site to increase the average order value and increase the likelihood of repurchase rate. And then secondly, just focusing on customer lifetime value, retention and repurchase rate already, compared to Facebook a few years ago, where I was listening to the tracksuit episode recently, and you're talking about you used to be able to put $2 in the poker machine and $3 would come out, and you could just do that forever. So that's like a trend I'm seeing a lot of, and we're acting on. I think in general, though, as far as some of the other trends we're seeing is just a heavy focus on brand and creative in general. Like the creative is getting, like if we were to zoom out, you used to just be able to have a Canva account and you could get together something, but like real creative that really resonates with your customers, I think is something that people are spending a lot. The best brands are spending the most amount of time on. The second one we're seeing, which again is a little bit more micro or boring, would be around bundles. Like the best brands, even if we look at it in the context of a sale, no one's just being like, hey, we've got this pan, it's 67% off. So if we look at Hexclad, amazing brand, their Black Friday sale is like, yeah, you can get a big discount, but you're buying the 20-piece set. Like there's no, or True Classic, like, yeah, you can get 60% off, but you're buying 24 t-shirts. There's no, so I think this is again, just a bit micro, but the whole idea that people will have, the best brands will have sales where just like, yeah, one bikini is 90% off on Black Friday. It's just not true anymore. It'll be all around. Oh, and any time of the year. Mother's Day, whatever it is, like that this is what we're going to see more and more of. And I think this is just one that's coming from the top, is there's also always been a lot of gifting involved in e-commerce, and gift cards is something I find super interesting. But I actually think the brands that benefit the most from gifting outside of apparel, where we have the size thing, are products that can be gifted without a gift card. I can buy you a really nice like I can buy you a Ridge wallet. Like I can make that executive decision. Like, and you might not like it as much as one chose yourself, but like products that can be gifted without gift cards. Somebody can buy you a Hexclad. Somebody can buy you hydro water bottle flask or whatever.
feel like you must have, like, going back to the creative stuff, this is something that we always love talking about, like brands doing things differently, you know, and like, why is it if you go back to the episode we had, the tracksuit episode, in terms of like predicting what you can get, do you think that the whole concept of brand and creatives come back out now because it's so much harder to get that traffic or keep attention through sort of like paid traffic things? So like brand has to come to the forefront of who they are, what they do, to get people to care about what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the term D2C will die, and it's just about building a brand, and it doesn't really matter where your customers, like, it's still, the brand is D2C. Like, people will find out about you, but they might buy you on Amazon or in Walmart, or Feastables use our software, right? I think it's a sub 12-month-old product at this stage. If you go to the 7-Eleven in Singapore, I don't mean go to the Marina Bay Sands, some flagship store, there is Feastables at checkout. There is, in my neighborhood in Singapore, there is a vending machine that is just Feastables. You can get it in every Walmart in North America. Now, it's just about building. I think brand is, I think it never left. I think we just called it something else for a little while. Like, yeah.
Oh, it's like, how do you get people to care about things? It's like, what do you
Yeah,
actually stand for? And it's like, that's one
exactly.
thing that we love working with, like early stage startups, is like consolidating those thoughts and ideas and just like building the brand around that. Because I
Yeah.
think like creative can be fun. You know, I feel like there are a lot of people talk about creative and it's like super stressful to come up with all these different ideas. But I feel like, I don't know, if you're energized by ideas, I feel like that is the magic. That's where all the good stuff comes.
Do you reckon people going too far a little bit now too? Like you have to stand out. You know, like there's
Like
like
just for the sake of standing
like
out.
there's a full spectrum of extremes now. Like to brands, like you got to stand for something. So they're like,
Yeah.
well, I'm going to be like the most extreme out there.
Yeah. Turned up to 11
Yeah,
type
turn
of
up to
stuff.
11, which I feel
Yeah.
like, I don't mind that too, but it makes it interesting. I feel like you must see, like, do you have any brands that you love at the moment? I feel like it's like asking a kid, a parent, who their favorite kid is, because you got a bunch of people who use your stuff. But who do you like that's doing things well at the moment?
Oh, look, not necessarily, I won't say, I'll say from a brand in the context of like product delivery. Like, I just think Hicks at the moment is just unstoppable. Like, the product is so good. The way they're expanding internationally so deliberately is so good. They're allowing consumers to interact with them where they interact normally. Like, they've got a partnership with Costco. They're really using influencers very well, long term, not like short term paid for post. Like Gordon Ramsay, and pairing up with chefs on a local level in LA and New York and stuff as well. So yeah, I think that's one that stands out.
What does a normal week look like for you? I'm sure you've got lots going on working in Singapore. How long have you been there, and what is like the clock look like?
So I have been here 12 years now. I'm actually moving back to Sydney at the moment, or in the next, say, 12 weeks. What's the day look like? So one thing, I think the interesting things about the day is, one, I'll often have calls late at night and early in the morning because, 70% of our revenue comes from North America. And then as well, one thing we haven't chatted about yet is we also have made a couple of acquisitions as well. And sometimes the software companies we'll be considering acquiring will be based in New York or wherever they might be. So I think the interesting things about my day would be, the time zone piece. I think we have a senior leadership team every Monday morning. We run the daily stand-ups. I think that they're a really useful tool as well. We are a remote first company. My one thing is I like everybody to have a 4-hour overlay with Singapore. So I don't need everybody to, it doesn't need to be a perfect 8-on-8 coverage. I think 4 is kind of the minimum, with the exception of our sales and customer success team, who obviously need to be where most of the revenue and customers are. And still talk to customers every day. I'd say they're the interesting things about my day.
I think that's an important thing, like talking to your customers and really getting that honest feedback straight up, because I feel like people who we've had on the pod who've stood out to me have been ones who've been so obsessed with that part of the process. Like that is the magic. Like if you do that well, you'll be able to do the rest kind of well. So do you think like having that energy in that certain specific part of the business is key?
Yeah, I'd say it's, so we have company values. Our number one company value is customer obsession, starting with the customer and working backwards. And this is an enduring thing, because if you think, I've been on and off building for e-commerce merchants since 2013. Shopify was this tiny thing in 2013, and the customers were often like craftspeople. You know, it was people who made a beard oil or a new pocket knife or something that would start to sell it on, or candles in their bathtub that would start to sell it online. It was like a huge segment. So product market fit also comes and goes, right? So yeah, I think that's the most important thing. And we were chatting before the pod, it's like, what's the same since last time and what's different since last time, aka like mistakes I see founders making. And that is, yeah, just not obsessing enough over the customer. I think for every, even yeah, it's just got to be part of the DNA. Even like if we have a document internally on some new product or whatever we're going to build, or even a ticket, it's got to mention the customer, like customer/ICP twice per paragraph or 8 times for A4 page, or we'll just scrap the whole thing.
Yeah, we did mention that, like the things that you take with you and the things that you might scrap with the next project or the next
Yeah.
business. How is it hard to sometimes let go of things that have worked in the past that might not work with the current business, or is it easy to sort of branch between the two?
I don't think it's, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't think it's, I didn't think it was that hard, but I think if the two that makes it not that hard is the customer obsession, starting with the customer and working backwards. And the second thing is going super fucking fast. If you do those two things, you can't hold on to something that's not working for very long. Like if you actually earnestly do those two things, it's really difficult to hang on to something that's not working, regardless of what it did in the past.
I think pace is important too, because I feel like even with us just doing the pod, like having things and just moving really quickly, really like set us up for just like can't really hold on to things, make decisions quickly, sort of learn from what you've done. But it's just like it's a good operating rhythm. I feel like that energy is needed.
Do you feel like it's also from like a scaling or finding the right people that fit with your team? Obviously, your background, you've had an experience now a few times over in the world of startups, but people who maybe you got friends, family, whoever that aren't in this space and have had, say, like corporate jobs or that sort of thing, and you try and have you had anyone you've tried to make the transition or pinch them from a different life and sort of throw them into the world of startups?
Good question. I think just to jump back earlier on the pod, I completely agree with what you were saying there. And I think the other one is like, just keep showing up. You know, you guys have been doing it for 4 years. Like that's like I think that's another imperative thing there. And I think on the second point, you were sort of asking about assembling a team and pinching people across and finding the right things. I think to zoom out a bit, one of the differences, say, this time compared to TradeGecko, compared to Advocately, is we do have a smaller, more experienced, more expensive team than we would have necessarily had at the previous companies. On recruiting people across, we have kind of 3 key categories, I think. So one, we have the like the startup squad, like people who have worked for us in previous companies. 2, we have people from the network. So we have some amazing people working for us that have come in from, so like just not to, anybody unnamed is not amazing. Like, yeah, the person who originally taught Lachlan to code now works with us. Like, or one of the other TradeGecko co-founders worked with this agency, and that one of the guys from that agency now works for us. You know, like real inner circle referrals. I'd say that, and then obviously just like net new talent is always important too, I think.
I love that. Just like being around people and being open and sharing and supporting. I feel like sometimes when you're building stuff, it can be a lonely pursuit, but like when you got other people around you, they might be in different parts of the business or just other people that you know who are doing different things. I feel like that
I
is
don't think you can underestimate trust. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
building
Yeah.
trust and building time with
That's the
working
word.
working
Yeah.
with people. It's like we always use a sports analogy, but if you've played with someone before and you've like done it, you understand that, hey,
Predictability. You say. Yeah.
predictability. You know, like, hey, this person's going to swing around on their right foot and kick it out to me over here. I know that I'd rather play with them because I know what a little bit I can help my game by knowing how they might act. And it takes a long time, especially with like turnover of staff and the crazy stuff that's been going on in the startup world, like the whole idea of like, I want to keep hold and retain the good people making stuff happen. It's not like you can ever, I don't feel like you can ever own anyone in the world that is. If you're a talented person, like they're going to have options, you know what I mean? So you have to make it like they want to stay and work for you. You know, like they want to be here. They're here by choice. They're not here because like it's not prison, you know, it's not prison.
No.
And like working at Trade Gecko and that and being allowed to do all these different things, is that what you've seen like motivates people in your workplace?
Yeah, I think so. I think people who aren't motivated would find it very difficult to find a seat at AMP. I think it would probably, it's probably a little bit of chicken and egg there, I think. So that's sort of what I think about that. So yeah, they're the people that are motivated to join and are motivated to stay. But I think it's something that self-selects. I would almost say both ways through the recruitment process too.
You mentioned before about bringing in net new talent. Before that, you also mentioned going through some process of some acquisitions. Would love to get into your thoughts around this, why you've taken this approach and some of the learnings you've gone through from taking on some of these businesses.
Yeah. So I think this is a good example of something we're doing differently to the previous time is the acquiring. And the second thing is we are doing this multi-product company. So we already have 2 products that are deeply integrated and adjacent to one another on the value chain for the merchant. So I think acquisitions is a great way of skipping, say, the first 6 or 12 months of there's kind of 2 things, right? Just starting with some resemblance of product market fit and some customers who will scream at you if something goes wrong with the product is a really great place to be. Like, angry customers are a blessing. If anybody listening to this as a SaaS startup that no one would get upset if it went down, it's like you don't have product market fit. Like, no one cares about you. It's not a problem. So that's where we actually really love acquisitions. If we can get into a new segment with a great team who wants to stay, and we can kind of juice that team up a little bit as well and start with a couple of thousand customers, that's really important to us. So if we wanted to say the third leg of the stool, whatever that will be, so we have analytics, we have upsell, whatever that third stool is, that's where acquisitions is a super powerful tool to accelerate our business.
What about from the flip side of that? Obviously, from that you're talking about that from AMP taking on new businesses, but you've also been on the other side of the table where you've been the founder trying to get someone to acquire what it is that you're doing. Have you got any advice out there for people who are looking to do things and find the right partner along the journey to make that happen?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing there is the best thing you can do is to make sure you have options. And I don't mean that through find more buyers. I mean, make sure you haven't raised too much money. Make sure you're profitable. Make sure you can just be like, oh, cool, if this doesn't work out. So Lachlan and I sold Advocately to G2. We owned the whole thing, very profitable. We had the worst case scenario was just like still continue to own and work on this thing. So I think the number one thing I would say is make sure people have options, because we don't think if anybody wants to keep building, we want them to keep building. Or if somebody has an opportunity for a strategic acquisition, like we've done 2 of them, it's awesome. They should try and do that as well. So I think the number one thing I would say for founders is to make sure they have lots of options through the fundamentals of their business. And then as far as, I'd say that's the one thing. And I think I was listening to a podcast a few months ago, maybe even 6 months ago, and that person had acquired a few companies as well. And it did resonate with me. is I think you do want to be like a little bit coy. Like you don't want to come across as desperate or anything, but don't be too coy, because most of the time we just take what you say at face value. Like if you're like, oh no, we'd never sell, we're like, cool, man, sweet, all the best. Like, and if you do sell, like, or IPO or whatever, like I will be the first one to send you the bottle of champagne. Like, let us know where you, like, let me know the postal address when the time is right. I'd be absolutely delighted, because we normally just, yeah, keep rolling on. But I think for us, just to loop full circle, acquisitions is a great way. Like we mentioned earlier, the varying quality of different software products. When we were talking about our opportunity in the ecosystem, we did also notice there was, say, some hidden gems where amazing entrepreneurs who properly understood the customer were maybe had built a really high quality product that was maybe a little bit resource constrained. You know, maybe they loved that they had options and it was super profitable, where say me and Cameron would be more like, let's just double the engineering team right now. So that was the second thing, these kind of hidden gem people and teams and products.
When you say move fast, how fast are we talking? Like, yeah, we made that decision, we're going to go down this path. Like, how quickly can you whip up more engineers?
Well,
And
I can imagine it's very different when you're doing something between, like they mentioned before, like you and Lachlan as a bootstrap versus a funding, like you've got funding behind you and you have the ability to go and build a bunch of build a team.
Yeah, I think so. On the moving super fast, this is another interesting difference between last time and this time, is it's a difference between leadership and management. Leadership's actually kind of easy. Like if you have a really quality, small group of really smart, really bright people who want to push to the limits, it's not that difficult. But I think if you want to go super fast, you actually do need to lean into documentation, making sure everybody understands why you're doing something. So I'd say, how fast are we talking? I think one, documentation is really important, and then really tight cycles. Like, you know, hey, we're going to do this and we're going to talk about it again tomorrow. Like, we don't do anything next Tuesday. It's Wednesday. What is happening? If this is the most important thing and we want to move fast on it, why would we let it drag to next Tuesday? So an example would be, we have these two products, right? The upselling product we built from scratch and the analytics product that we acquired, which is an amazing product called Lifetimely. Those products looked and felt different, right? They had their own UIs, they had their own, there was no way of authing in between them. Like they weren't a single unified product. We were able to make sure they looked and felt the same, kind of like if you all have used HubSpot or Freshworks, they're big inspirations for us, or Rippling. You can kind of switch between the sales and the support product and it's like looks and feels like the same product. We were able to execute on that from a standing start, wasn't even being worked on, in a few weeks over the holidays. But it was because we really clearly identified what we were doing and why we were doing it and why it would help our customers. Two, we really tightened the scope in terms of, here's what we need to build this so it works for these two products. We don't need to build it for when we have 100 products in the future or whatever it is. Like, this is what we need to do now. And the other thing is, I set a ridiculously short time frame, not to make everybody do it in that time frame, but to make everybody think of all the reasons why that wouldn't work in the first week. Like, we can't, because if it's like a 6-week time frame or a 12-week time frame, it's like, you know what I'll do? I might think about the design of the switch. You know, like, you don't do the hardcore piece first, right? So yeah, there are 3 things that we did in a recent example.
That's like with any of my work. I reckon if someone gives me too long, or if I've like going back to school, if it's like, hey, you got like 4 weeks to do this piece of work, I'm doing it the night before. You know what I mean? I'm doing it the night before.
You're cramming.
This makes me think of another one, actually, is also you've got to cut everything else. You know, you've got to cut stuff like, hey, everything needs a new business case as to why it's more important than this. I actually think doing more is not getting more. Doing less of the most important stuff is the key.
Well, how do you as a leadership team then tackle things like prioritization then? Like, you make a call like that and then you focus the team on doing something in a couple of weeks. How do you look at prioritization to make sure that they are focused on the right things at the right time?
Yeah, I think so. We use a framework called V2MOM, which is from Salesforce. It's very similar sort of thing to OKRs, and everything needs to link back to that. And actually, this is where, again, to bring up the customer stuff, it's like, hey, we should be doing that. It's like, for who? Where are they? What are their names? Like, we ship that feature tomorrow. Which 5 customers are like jumping into our VIP Slack channel going, Patrick, this is like, who are they? Like, so I think there should be that internal dichotomy of sales saying we need this for customers, like we need the enterprise plan, then product also saying, hey, look, we need to look at this AI stuff. Like, even though no one's ever asked for a AI interface to build new charts beforehand, like we have a unique insight that think it would be useful, customer success advocating for retention, marketing advocating for something else. There should be an internal conflict in a really positive way that leads to the most impactful stuff rising to the top.
Well, mate, question we ask all our guests is a bit of a mental health one. What do you turn to in your life when you're looking to get some energy back?
Yeah. So I love spending time with my family, like traveling. My fiance and I went to Sri Lanka recently. I was just in Noosa with my, like 9 of us in a house with my brothers and sisters and their partners and kids last week. I'd say that's one. Number 2 that I'm looking to do on a slightly more regular basis, moving back to Sydney, is surfing. So yeah. Oh, and then 3, I love playing video games with Lachlan.
Video games and surfing. I feel like you and Rob would get along.
Yeah, for sure.
He worked at Electronic Boutique back in the day, didn't you?
Yeah, fun fact, EB Games. Long story, people have heard it before, whatever, but I did the EB Games a bit for a while, so I did like the midnight Call of Duty releases and all sorts of stuff there.
Awesome.
I loved it. Sick. What games you played?
Look, most of the time I actually took from Halo and Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 up to COVID, I played 0 games. Then, like a lot of people, I started playing Zelda and stuff in COVID. And then really everyone in COVID was inviting me to Zoom cocktail hours and stuff, which sucked. And, Lachlan was like, do you want to play Fortnite? So we started playing Fortnite, and now I still play Fortnite.
Fuck, bro, it sounds exactly like
the connection piece as well. I feel like friendships are made online too, aren't they? Like in those situations, you can strategize and do things or fight.
Our friendship group did something similar. They tried to do we did trivia on Zoom.
You couldn't even hide the fact that you hated it. You were literally snoring on the thing, and everyone's pretending to have a good time.
I just got drunk. I had like 3 glasses of red in the first 15 minutes of the game. I was like, this fucking sucks. It's nice to see everyone, but I just can't. I don't want to be here anymore. So let's find something else to do.
Yeah.
But surfing. So you're looking forward to come back here and surfing in Sydney?
Yeah. Like I still, in the last few months, I did the Sri Lanka trip, did the Noosa trip, but I think it'll be great to, get up at 6 a.m., get down to the beach and
longboard,
make it a routine a bit more. Shortboard, but I also recently bought a JS Industries Big Baron. Have you seen these out at all? It's like a mid-length. What's that?
I've seen a few videos of Julian Wilson riding them. They're like it's
almost like a mid-length, like pintail, curved nose, heaps of volume, just for those. I'm pushing the better part of 100 kilos at the moment, and just to help you skate through a few of those dead sections and stuff. It's awesome. It's so much fun.
They got dad boards, aren't they? And they're called dad boards. Yeah. Which I'm not complaining, mate. I ride them all day, every day. Like, and I'm not.
You should hear this, Patrick. Rob reckons he started the trend with the wetsuit without the sleeves.
I wear the sleeveless wetsuit.
Yeah.
It's probably because my arms are so big. It's like it's hard to keep them in a wetsuit. That's sort of the reason why I went with that.
No, the JS. So I've got a couple of JS boards. I think the Sub-Zero or something is what I would take out most of the time, but just on a few of those days, if it's like breaking right out the back of DY and super, chunky and flaky and stuff, the Big Baron is a great time.
Well, mate,
I love surf lingo.
If you ever find yourself down this way, we're 10 minutes from Bells Beach, so we'd love to get out there.
Oh, cool.
And,
nice. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
You could put the vest on.
You put the vest on,
and then I'll shoot some content, and you guys can just go out there and see who can slam together a good score.
Oh, besides the move back to Sydney, it's weirdly enough, when we're actually recording this, it's the 1st of May, which sort of blowing my mind a little bit of how quickly this year's flying. But what are you excited about for the rest of the year?
I'm getting married in November. I mean, I basically just do Just work, mate. That's sort of it. I think we've got a lot. That's it. Outside work, got the move coming up. Getting married in Sri Lanka in November. So yeah, what's going on? What about you guys?
Oh,
Uh,
not as exciting as that. I wish I was going to Sri Lanka.
no,
That'd be cool.
no marriage. I'm already
Nah,
married, but it's
nah.
like I
Maybe
feel
a
like
few kids.
we just work too. You know, like it's
That's what I feel like. It's
so
like
boring.
but when you're passionate about stuff, I feel like a lot of people can see it as like a psychoness or whatever, but like you genuinely like it doesn't really feel like work a lot of the
No.
time because you're that like obsessed with what you're doing. I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes I can find myself even in social settings and I'm just like I'm that buzzed up and energized about what we're doing. It's like, hang on, just relax and just ask them a question, you know?
That's just because you're rude, mate.
You know, but like you can be so like I feel like it's like passion, isn't it? You got a passion for what you're actually doing.
Yeah, I think there was no sort of real rush from Cameron or I to get back to work or anything in terms of we just wanted to and could not do it.
Well, mate, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. And if people want to learn more about what it is you do, how do they find your stuff?
Useamp.com is the best place to find that, and on Twitter I am PC_brands, which is a product I need to start using a lot more of apparently, but all good.
There you go. Loved it.